All right, so we got a couple pictures of the Seminole Moors right here. We got the Seminole Moors, aboriginal to what is referred to today as Florida, and Moorish Guard, fraudulently referred to as Indians, just for a couple visuals. We got a picture of Alamovid Moors. And this is the clan of Moors that went into Al-Andalus. They had this guard, and they still have the Alamo today in Texas, named after this tribe of Moors. And the Alamo is one of the first temples of quote unquote mosque in America. The Alamo in Texas. So named after this tribe of Moors that went into Al-Andalus. We can read a book called Jews of Muslim Spain. We'll go over that book prior, later date or whatever, but they'll talk about those two tribes, the Almoravids and the Almoravids. The two clans of Moors that went up from America to Al-Andalus in, the Enlightenment period. Brought high science and culture, cleaned up the plague and all the diseases that the modern Europeans was causing. These two clans were primarily responsible. So this FYI. So I'll continue. It has been proven by multiple scholars and sources that Moors have in fact been to America prior to any European, packed full of information that isn't in contemporary history books, which I trust will get anyone's mind rewiring, pondering, making amends, and repairs, encouraging one to study more, accept the truth, and purge the lies. Considering that we have already established that this government on North American continent was established to end 1,000 years of wars between the Moors and the Europeans. So the Treaty of Peace and Friendship that we've been covering the last couple of weeks, the whole point of that was to end all the wars. And I don't know if y'all remember, I did like a list timeline of all the wars from like 700 to 700 years of wars, right? They might have been called the Ottoman versus the Roman War, or whatever the case may be, but to end all those wars from quote unquote Muslims and quote unquote Romans. That's what that treaty represented. Moors referred to as Phoenicians, Muslims, Saracens, Almoravids, Olmec, Dogon, Spanish, Ottoman, Carthaginian, Iroquois, Egyptian, Algonquin, Inca, Aztec, Toltec, Yamasee, and European, often Albion pale-skinned nations, German, Visigoths, Vikings, Christians, Slavic, Slavs, Frank, Dutch, etc. So these are, of course, different names, but don't let that confuse you. And the reason why I was saying these different names, because all these would be the Moors going to war with the Germans, the Visigoths, the Vikings, the Christians, the Slavics, the Franks, the Dutch, the Romans. All these would be what they say, Moors versus the Christians, or the Muslims versus the Romans. So all that's in the same space, right? Proven by history, there has always been malicious intent. The Intercatera Divina Church Bulla of 1493, following the fall of the Moors in Granada, so that would be what's called Spain today, and quote acts of repressing information and burning of books to maintain power, perpetrated by the colonial Inquisition, Crusade Europeans, stand as undoubtable proofs of cause and effect and guidelines for modern day operations. In order to have a better grasp on American history, you must know that the word American is a morphemic form of Al-Moroccan. Al-Moroccan, and now the prefix Al is saying from or descending. Now, Al-Moroccan, so you're just saying descendant of Moroccan, is referring to Moors or the Moabites. In fact, in 1828 American Dictionary on the English language, it states that the word American originally applied to the copper tone natives of the land. And of course, we know the copper tone native, with the penny, or different shades of brown people. This is the reason you hear some people say Haitians are quote unquote black, or Puerto Ricans are quote unquote black. We are not black, but we are all our Moroccans or Americans, the copper tone natives found in America. So here's an example of transliteration, or how vowels are interchangeable, but it does not change the meaning of the word. It could be A, E, I, O, U. As long as the prefixes are the same, the word is the same. So American equals Al-Moroccan. Vowels are interchangeable. When studying the morphology of the word Al-Moroccan, through the processes of transmutation and transliteration, the L is dropped. The first O, it sounds like O in woman. The O in woman sounds like the I in the word in. The second O is changed to an E. The second C is removed, and thus you have American out of Al-Moroccan. America's most ancient name is Amexa. Out of this is where you get the names Olmec from Old Amexa and Mexico. And also, this is when you say Mecca or Mecca, Arabia, Old Mecca, it's the same connection, same lineage. I want to throw that in there too. From Ame, you can see its relationship to American and Al-Moroccan, which at all of their roots, the word Moor is found. In the Webster's New Universal Unabridged Dictionary, the definition of the word Moor reads, any dark-skinned person, which is very similar to the 1828 dictionary or definition of American, which applies to any of the copper tone people found on the two continents of America and the adjoining islands. Also stated by Noble Jew Ali, Amexem is the first true and divine name of Africa. And you'll read that too in that Quran you just got. Of course, we're going to be going over different chapters of the Quran as well, but that's stated as well. The true divine name of Africa is Amexem. Not only that, but all of the continents were connected at one point. So I urge you to observe this. Amexem plus Africa equals America. Ame plus Rika. Olmec is derived from Old Amexem. The United States of America, or Estados Unidos Americanos, or Estados Unidos Americanos. So when you say it like that, it becomes more apparent, and you can hear the Morocco when you say it in the Latin form, or some say Spanish. United States of Morocco, or United States of America, right? Interchangeable. The American Revolution was a colonial revolt, a revolt of Europeans against the Moors, or against the true Americans, the Aboriginal people of the land. It becomes very easy to see that we, Moors, falsely called Indian, Black, Spanish, etc., had the European colonists in bondage first. Still, some of us wanted them here, some of us didn't. From this revolt is where the female Masonic order comes from, the Daughters of the American Revolution, or DAR. And that's what people like Hillary Clinton and different Albion women, the reason they formed this organization is because of how some of our people were treating them bad when we had them as Slavs. Also, when people get citizenship today, when they come from the East, and they think, well, they really denationalizing themselves under the 14th Amendment, and they're becoming what you call naturalized, they have to take a DAR test. When you read the DAR manual, you'll see that they're getting taught what we got taught here in North America, kindergarten through 12th grade. They're getting taught that all in one manual real quick. So they're getting taught about the Indians and the quote unquote blacks getting shit from Africa. They're getting taught that all in one little test. And they have to pass that test to be granted citizenship in the United States. So I just want to give you a little background on DAR. As stated in the Bible, the beast will have even the most elite fool. Most people think by going to college to be a lawyer will fix the issue of our people, but it will not. Most people think that by becoming a policeman or a policewoman, which means they work for the very people suppressing us, they will help fix the problem, which it will not. When people go to colleges, oftentimes they immediately join a fraternity. These fraternities are set up as gateways to help promote the idea of joining secret societies or Masonic orders, etc. When people go to community college or even lucrative colleges, they will only be exposed to a privy of counsel if they join secret societies and clubs, as well as pay thousands of dollars for the information and take oaths of death, not to reveal sacred or secret knowledge. This is how the rulers rule, and this is how they maintain rulership. They then place people in compromising positions. They allow people's egos to get in the way. Most people don't want to be exposed to the fact that they've been working against our people, so they stay quiet. They're given a comfortable job, continue to suppress their own or our people, ameliorate their own interests, and serve the corporate state. So, of course, that's why the divide and conquer practices that we always know about, and we see it right here. So, a lot of people ask, like, there's a lot of our people, we outnumber the foreigners or the people doing us bad. How is this allowed to happen? Because the foreigners have our people's minds, right? So here's a quote from Matthew, or the Bible, most modern Bible that people know about. Matthew 24:24. And it's a quote. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall shew great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive every elect. And that's what we're talking about. Oh yeah, so you must have got family members, Brother Rocky, that friends and family that was police or something like that.
Yeah, just friends, and then kind of people, or just even like going to college and then kind of just seeing how people move and where they ended up and how they ended up becoming. Even when I worked like through a corporate company, like you just kind of see people just end up becoming entrenched and part of the system.
Yeah, they get brainwashed, man. You can't tell them nothing different, man.
Mm-hmm.
So most people think with a degree or even 2 degrees, they would be better off in life. Yeah, we all know people who have attained degrees from a college or university who has the same position and pay as someone who does not. All of these historically Black universities, quote unquote, yet here we are in 2023, still facing police terrorism. They, Europeans, may not be sending dogs at us or fire hoses yet. We are still choked out in the streets, shot unarmed, our communities gentrified. I need not remind you of these injustices and terrorism we go through. So here are the list of the true Americans, and this is not a complete list, but we want to be able to distinguish what a U.S. citizen is versus an American citizen. So the Colombians, true Americans. The Dominicans, the true Americans. The Haitians, the true Americans. The Mexicans, true Americans. The Moors, true Americans. Even though all these are Moors, but these are what you call American states within the empire. Boricua, Most people know them as Puerto Rico or Boricua, true Americans, Cubans, true Americans, the Peruvians, the true Americans, the Brazilians, true Americans, Nicaraguans, true Americans. And even in the Nicaraguan flag, I don't know if y'all can see it, but it's kind of blurry for this one. But this is a pyramid and it has a fez in the middle of the Nicaraguan coat of arms. Matter of fact, let me pull that up. Nicaragua. These are Central American coat of arms. Nicaragua coat of arms. Let's go to images so I can give you a bigger picture. So here is what I was trying to show you. And as you can see, in the Nicaraguan coat of arms, this is a fez in the middle of the pyramid. So it's no secret that the fez is an Moroccan headdress. All right. I just wanted to show you all that. They also call it the lighthouse or the Liberty cap. So we're dealing with American culture here. Let's go back. Of course, the Chileans, Argentinians, Ecuadorians, Trinidadians, and Guatemalans are the true Americans. So transitioning, we were talking about this last week, but I wanted to actually bring up the actual situation dealing with the General Education Board, T.D. Gates and John D. Rockefeller, and what they use to dumb our people down since kindergarten. One of the major ways the current general school system failed us in our education is through the omission and failure to teach etymology and civics on a grade school level. Etymology is the science of the origin of words. Nobody knew that. And civics is the science of dealing with citizenship in a political way, organized way, with the nationality of people. It is up to the individual upon completion of grade school to function in a society inclusive of having a mental capacity to keep government in check. This fundamental principle or maxim is what these quotes are rooted in. So when we talk about the Declaration of Independence, which is still binding law, just like the Constitution and Treaty, the laws of nature and nature God. Law of nature and of nature's God. A law is nature and nature is God. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that we are endowed by their creator with unalienable rights. Unalienable rights are the rights that you can't take away. And among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. So in order to secure rights, organizations are created. Who are the people involved in these organizations? Competent men and women that know civics, which means they know the law of the land. They can regulate and govern themselves. We read what a state is a couple weeks ago, right? So governments are instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So that's back to the beneficiaries or the people who elect trustees to do X, Y, Z. It's not the trustees being tyrants running the people. That's not de jure government. That's what you call pseudo government or feudal government. All right. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So that's what a republic is about, which is opposite of democracy. The people or competent people organized. Checks and balances. So here is Frederick T.D. Gates, which was the business advisor to John D. Rockefeller in 1913. So here's the mission statement of the General Education Board. And this General Education Board is how the curriculum started for kindergarten through 12th grade. It started in 1913. Here's the mission. In our dream, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. When you look up docile, it means that you can't think. You just doing whatever somebody tells you to do. You're just a robot. So that's their goal, is to have people to that level where they're just taking orders. This was the mission statement of Frederick T. Gates, which is what's the other Gates' name? What's his name? No, what's the Gates now? Yeah, this is Bill Gates' grandfather.
No way.
And John D. Rockefeller, most people know who that is. So these two people came together and created the General Education Board, which was for the people, which was for the indigenous people of the land to make them docile, all right, to their molding hand. The present educational conventions fade from our minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers. They don't want philosophers. They didn't want our people to be brilliant. They want us to be dummies. They did not want our people to be philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We are not to raise up among them authors, orators, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo, great artists, painters, musicians, nor will we cherish even the humbler ambition to raise up from among them lawyers, doctors, preachers, statesmen. So we know statesmen are just members of organized government, of whom we now have ample supply, or now have ample supply. Let me check the chat. Let me see. Exactly. They want wage debt slaves. So this was what they wanted. And as you can see, fast forward to 2023, a lot of our people are docile. Because when we tell them this information, they're looking at us like we crazy, right? Because it's the Walking Dead now. We got a dead state of mind.
Wait, like.
Right? They're looking at you crazy, like, look, that's the devil. It's all based on this animal training, right? Did you say something, Brother Rocky?
Oh no, I was just saying you ain't lying.
Right, like serfs.
Yeah.
Serfs. All right. With the above quotes from the Declaration of Independence stating that it is the right and duty of the people to correct and keep government in check, as also stated in the Declaration, government's sole purpose is to secure and safeguard pre-existing rights of the people, while gaining its very power to do so from the people. Do you see how without this fundamental knowledge coming out of the high school with the general education from people who desire to keep us docile can and does affect the overall understanding of government as it relates to the rest of the community? This lack of knowledge and omission of fundamental principles is the root of what causes color of law, the appearance of something being lawful, yet it is not. Again, how can one properly understand what is lawful and what is not when the sole purpose of the General Education Board is to keep the people in a state of mental docility to their molding hands, right? So if the people are dumbed down, how could people know government structure if they have no clue what that is, right? That's why as institutions such as temples, Moorish organizations, that's what civics is about. For your people to teach you this. The foreigner is not going to teach you civics. That's not in their best interest. It's bad for business, right? So the reason I mentioned etymology and civics is because one, civics is the science that runs government. Civics is the fundamental understanding of how civilization is ran. And etymology is one of the factors in deciding the legal and lawful definition of words, terms, phrases, and ideas. I am particularly placing emphasis on the etymon because in our societies, connotative linguistics are, so when you say connotative, that's like slang, or what you would call slang is heavily promoted in order to take our minds off the factual principles that govern language. It may appear that slang is harmless, but if used in the wrong context, it can be very dangerous, as all law is specific. This principle in language is exactly what the Tower of Babel represents in the Bible. So confusion, not using proper words. So the word black, if we're not using connotative, it means pale, for example. So here's a quote. Here's a quote from the Bible again. Genesis chapter 11, verse 1 through 9. To further reiterate how it was told in the Bible, how it was a people that are going to come try to confuse the people for docile purposes. Quote, now the world had one language and one common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we would be scattered over the face of the whole earth. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, if as one people speak in the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Right? See where we're going? Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. So that was the whole purpose, to create connotative linguistics, contrary to denotative linguistics, which denotative means the literal etymology of the word. Connotative, like I said earlier, would be slang. So the people spoke the same language, meaning they knew etymology. In order to destroy the builders of the tower, connotative linguistics was entered into the language. In other words, the etymon principle was taken away in certain communities to cause confusion. So that even if we tried as hard as we could to build our tower, which represents us progressing forward as a people, we could not. So the tower represents progress moving forward. Now we're breaking down the symbology of the Bible. Anthropomorphic symbology of the Bible. Without the etymon, we would be in constant disagreement and debates with one another. For example, most of our people think they are black, yet if I tell them we are not, they think I'm removing their identity because they don't know the rules of etymon. Remember, when you look up black, it's going to say black means pale, right? Therefore, we would not be speaking the same language because those who do not know the etymon cannot separate the wheat from the chaff, and may think those who choose not to claim the term black as an identity are against them. That's why all people from the eastern part of the world that come over here that may be as dark as our people over here, they don't identify as black. They identify as Hindu, Pakistan, Indonesian, etc. They do not refer to themselves as black, but they won't tell the people, their people in North America that have not been fortunate enough to travel that, you know, you're not black. Why? Because they're going to flex up. What you mean? You racist. You a sellout, or whatever the case may be, right? It's going to be something far-fetched. So they don't even tell us. They don't even be bothered with telling our people here that. That's an example. Holy Bible reference, St. John edition, page 115. or St. John's 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This one was in the beginning with God. All things came into existence through him, and apart from him, not even one thing came into existence. Regardless of your faith or religious beliefs, I urge you to pay particular attention to the above verse. The word is primary in that statement. You better be careful with how you use them. It is important that we know what words mean. In order to know what they mean, we must know etymology or the etymon. And through it, we can further break down the verse and have a greater comprehension of the world around us. Now we're transitioning to the word of Brother Sight. Peace and love, man. How you doing?
Just trying not to melt all over the place.
What'd you say?
Trying not to melt all over the place.
Oh man, I feel you, man.
It's hot.
It's hot around here, man. Get all that vitamin D before it's winter time. We're gonna be crying. Talking about it's cold around here. But no, I feel you. It's a hot summer though. All right, so continuing with the word God, now that we see the importance of etymology, not just using words because, oh, my mom used it, my friend used it this way, so I'm gonna use this word in this context. But the word might not mean that. The word God is derived from the Sanskrit word huta. Now, I'm going to bring up etymon.com so I can show you the full definition. And this is a free website, a free search engine rather, of an etymon dictionary. Very cool, right? So I'm going to put in the word God. So as a scholar, we know how to look up words. And this applies to any dictionary, mind you. So when you look up a word, it's going to tell you the most commonly used, how it's used today, and it's going to slow walk you back to what the word meant in its original form. So let's go through an example. God, it means supreme being in Old English. You know, English is modern. It means image of God, God-like person. But when you take it back to the Proto-Germanic, which German is older than English, it wasn't even spelled G-O-D, it was spelled G-U-T, Guten, of Old Saxon, right? When you take it back to Old German, which is older than older than English as well, it was spelled G-O-T, right? So we're gonna take it all the way to the pi. What is pi? What's P-I-E? Proto-Indo-European languages. What are some of those Proto-Indo-European languages? Languages like Latin, Arabic, Sanskrit. Sanskrit will be a Hindu language. All these languages are older than High German, older than English. What did God mean at this point? It meant to invoke. In Sanskrit, it was called huta. We just read that, but I want to take you to the actual definition so we can see more intricate. So God essentially means to invoke, right? To call upon, to pour out. So what does invoke mean? To manifest. So once again, if I tell you I'm going to work out tomorrow, it's just a thought in my mind. But once I actually work out, it's something that everybody can verify and take a picture of. It's physical. It went from the metaphysical realm to the physical realm. I manifested or invoked that. That's God. God is not a noun. It's a verb. It's an action. So this is an example of what we mean by we must know what words mean. So when the ancient people say, or you hear people like Wu-Tang and different people that are quote unquote conscious, they're like, we're God. We're God. I'm God. What's up, God? This is the origin where we're coming from. We're not saying we're the creators of the heaven and the earth, but we are the micro of the macro. We definitely are in the image of the creator of the heavens and earth, right? But God just means to invoke. All right, so that's my whole point of bringing that up. So any questions before I move forward with that? Pretty straightforward. All right. So, Huta is translated, alliterated into other languages through the process called morphology. In German, it is Gott. That's why I went through that. So this will make more sense. Transliterated again into modern English, it becomes God. As you can see, the spelling of the word changes, but the meaning does not. So through logic, the reasoning mind, also called common sense, we are able to see that the word God is a verb transitive, and it is something you do. The word God is not a noun, person, place, or thing. When you God, you invoke or call things into existence. That's why I said manifesting. We're in the business of manifesting as an ancient culture. The word God is a verb or an action. All things come into existence through him. And that's why we read that earlier chapter. The word is God, right? These basic principles of language are the roots in which cause the people of this continent, America, to be branded. Brands, labels, misnomers, or I can't talk right now, or terms have been taught in our minds to replace the factual concepts associated with identity, nationhood, and descendability. Descendability means inheritance, descendable, being things able to be passed down, businesses, property, assets being passed down to your bloodline. You can't do that as a stateless person or a person that don't have a nationality. As well as causing division amongst those being subjugated. These brands and labels are as follows: Indian, Black, West Indian. So West Indian would be our people in the islands, like Haiti, Cuba. They think they West Indians, or that's the West Indies. And our people in Hindustan is supposed to be the East Indies, right? Colored, African American, Latino, and so on. These brands affect us legally, right? So the Tower of Babel affects us. The Tower of Babel is what? Causing the confusion, right? Being called by these fake names strip us of who we are, affecting our political and civil status. Through these terms, distinguished forms of identity, our history, heritage, and culture has been removed. This act of genocide, represented in the movie Roots, everybody's seen Roots, the scene with Kuta Kinte, where his name is stripped and a new one is given, Toby. So that's an example. Kuta Kinte would be an example of his indigenous culture, keeping it because the culture is in the language of your name, right? That's why anybody, if you blindfolded right now, I love this example. Oh, my last name is Lee. You would just assume that person's Chinese, right? That's an example, right? So Toby would be a name that's given. That's an example of denationalization practices to make you a ward or a minority. This same principle applies to us today. Instead of calling us by our nationality, national name, which will in fact link us back to our culture, history, heritage, land, civil, and political status, we are called by war names called nom de guerres. Pseudo, not genuine. I'll be going over how these pseudonyms or fake names, brands, war names, and nom de guerres affect us in a legal, political, economical, and spiritual way. My goal is to inform people of what information is withheld from us. Such information should be taught on a grade school level. So our children should be getting this information, or just youngsters. You may got some nephews or whatever. Our goal is to give people something to study and reference, which over time will become useful in correcting a lot of the social, economic, and political problems we face today on a daily basis. Now remember, our point of getting this information and becoming competent is so we can tell our people in a competent way this information. Simple as that. Through the heinous act of what is contemporarily called slavery, peonage, and human bondage, as well as certain legal acts of color or law practices, we the people have been artfully persuaded by and have been failed by those confessing to be doctors, scholars, community leaders, political leaders, etc. And note, the word doctor means teacher. So a lot of people that get doctorates or receive a 7-year degree, etc., are able to teach. And that's where that term comes from, you know. A lot of social, economic, civil, and political problems we face as a people is rooted in the omission of facts and truths. In this booklet, you will begin to see how through acts of law or pretended law or color of law, so color of law means fake law. I'm not sure we went over that with this group in the law dictionary, but we will. Certain things had to be done in order to fool the people. You will see toward the end how this quote from the movie Captain America, Winter Soldier reveals the ugly truth of how we were tricked. Captain America, Winter Soldier by Dr. Armanzola, quote, Hydra was founded on the belief that humanity could not be trusted with its own freedom. What we did not realize was that if you try to take that freedom, they resist. The war taught us much. Humanity needed to surrender its freedom willingly. And that has to do with today. A lot of things are voluntary, whether it be a driver's license. People are voluntarily going to the DMV. Rather, anything you think of is voluntary. But our people think is mandatory for lack of knowledge. And we'll go into things in the future in more depth on what some of those things are in law, such as the Internal Revenue Service Code Manual, which talks about how taxes are voluntary. That'll be an example. I know this group hasn't read that manual, but we will go into that as well. So no, refer back to the above quote once I reference the 13th and 14th Amendment, as well as the definition of the word license. Now, like I said last week, the 14th Amendment, now keep in mind, when you say the Bill of Rights, the 10 Bill of Rights, there's only 10. Those are 10 amendments. So everything after the 10th Amendment is fraud. Now the original 13th Amendment in its 20 sections, or Section 12 states that traffic in slaves with Africa is hereby forever prohibited on pain and the forfeiture of all rights and property of person engaged therein. And the descendants of Africans shall not be citizens. So this is the even though I just said the 13th Amendment is fraud, most people look at the 13th Amendment only has 2 sections, but so the original document has 20 sections. Now, people that think they got shit from Africa, if they buy into that, okay, cool. This document says you're still not a U.S. citizen. Descendants from Africans, or people that think they're African, are not U.S. citizens. All right. The reason for this is because the States of the Union was established for the European colonizers to be recognized as a sovereign nation, doing business on Moroccan or American soil. Granted authority by the Sultan of Morocco, which we went over last week, and protected by His Imperial Majesty via the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1786, revised in 1787, and 1861, which to date is the world's longest treaty. We Moors, branded Indian, black, colored, Negro, West Indian, African, American, Spanish, Latino, etc., are the sovereign power which recognized them in the first place. So once again, our people recognize the Europeans, the British, French, Dutch, Irish, which were pilgrims, lower class, fugitives, criminals in their respective European countries. And they declared their independence. And after that, we recognize these people. All right. So we can't be U.S. citizens. We're American citizens, not U.S. citizens. It's a difference. So in order to smooth that fact over, they had to come up with the 14th Amendment. That's the Naturalization Act, which was not ratified. In order for something to be in law, it must be ratified, and it was not. We're going to go through and show you why it wasn't. In order to have jurisdiction over us, the natural people of the land, they had to create the 14th Amendment, although never lawfully ratified, as well as hide the other 18 sections of the original 13th Amendment. And it's a congressional record that was on June 13, 1967. Also in a court case, Diet versus Turner in 1968, and also a court case, State versus Phillips, that talked about the same thing. Documented proof of the unconstitutionality of the 14th Amendment from the congressional records, proceedings, and debate of the 90th Congress first session. And I have a copy. I have a certified copy of that actually at the house, and I've used that. I've used that in court as well to substantiate my citizenship. But we'll talk about that later. So here's a list of states that rejected the 14th Amendment in 1967. Texas rejected it. I'm sorry. This was in 1860s. So Lincoln got killed in 1868. Lincoln was killed around the time of the 13th Amendment. He was the last honorable president, and that's why they killed him, because he established what you call the Freedmen's Bureau, which was for freemen, people that knew their nationality and that weren't under the subject of the United States. That's why they killed him, because they wanted to blur the lines of that fact. So Texas rejected the 14th Amendment. Georgia rejected the 14th Amendment. Florida rejected it. Alabama rejected it. North Carolina rejected it. South Carolina rejected it. Virginia rejected it. Louisiana rejected it. Delaware rejected it. Maryland rejected it. Mississippi rejected it. Ohio rejected it. The 14th Amendment was not ratified. So we need to know that. Back to the Tower of Babel. All this is for confusion purposes. But if the people of the land, competent in a jural society or a state body politic or a clan or a subdivision of a nation that knows law, you're not a minority, you know this information. They can't play you. All people need to know this information, because all people are running from ICE, getting deported for lack of knowledge, etc. So while it was also stated in the congressional record that the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional, the purported 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution is and should be held to be ineffective, invalid, null and void, and unconstitutional for the following reason. So one of the reasons was it wasn't ratified. It was rejected by more than 1/4 of the states in the Union. No state without consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. So when we talk about something not being ratified, that means that people at home and the majority did not have to agree. That didn't happen. The legislator urging this Congress to declare the 14th Amendment illegal. So this congressional record that I'm reading, I have a certified copy of from the Library of Congress. And we can look at that more in depth in a later time. But right now, just know that the 14th Amendment is what they're alleging to grant citizenship to people that are not U.S. citizens that want to become U.S. citizens. So just know that it's unconstitutional for purposes of this session right here. Any questions before I move on?
Yeah, I do. Can can you briefly go over again? I remember I heard you said that if I'm correct, that anything after the 10th Amendment was basically fraudulent, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, can you briefly touch on that again? Because yeah,
So if you Google right now the Bill of Rights or how many Bill of Rights are there, they're going to tell you 10. It's only 10 Bill of Rights. The
mm,
Bill of Rights are also known as amendments. So what that means is there only needs to be 10 amendments. You leaving?
gotcha,
Leaving? All right.
gotcha.
So
Yeah,
that means the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, 14th were not a fraud. On top of the fact that they won't ratify. Right? I'm gonna turn my screen off so I'm not looking crazy over here. But do you have any other questions? Anybody else have any questions? All right, so keep that in mind. One, it wasn't ratified. Two, it wasn't part of the Bill of Rights.